What is up, podcast land? Welcome to another episode of the Two Dates and a Dash podcast. I'm your host, Matt Cubbler. Before I introduce a good friend of mine, a buddy of mine, Brian Quinn, I want to first tell everybody where they can hear the podcast. Pretty much anywhere: iTunes, Stitcher, iHeart, Pandora, Applecast, Google, wherever you listen to podcasts, you can hear the Two Dates and a Dash podcast. All I ask is that you subscribe and click that automatic download button because that just helps me as far as my metrics and understanding how many people are downloading my podcast on any given episode. So thank you for doing that. Where can you learn more about me personally? MattKubler.com, clearly my name.com. There you'll learn about my career. You'll learn about the stuff I'm doing with leadership development and mentorship for kids, as well as my book, A Brother's Love, a Memoir, which I wrote 14 years ago about my brother Andy, who was autistic and had a severe stutter, but unfortunately passed away in 1989 in a car accident. So it's our life story and the single greatest accomplishment of my life. All right, without further ado, my man, BQ, Brian Quinn, what's up, buddy?
How's it going, man? Thanks for having me.
Hey, man, I'm glad we were able to make this happen. Thank God for a little bit of downtime for you, and I think it's going to be a great episode where people get to learn a little bit about the music industry and how your story can maybe help someone else appreciate their own journey and maybe see some hope at the end of the tunnel for where they are trying to get to in the music world.
Yeah, sure. And I'm glad we finally got to make it happen. And the downtime was actually very welcomed because it was nonstop there for a while.
And for those of you that don't know, Brian Quinn is the lead guitarist for Candlebox, the famed originally from the early '90s grunge rock era with Pearl Jam and all the great bands that came up out of the grunge era out of Seattle. Kevin Martin is the lead singer. He is originally from Seattle and grew up in the Nirvana, Pearl Jam world and created a great band that has lasted the 25 plus years. And granted, some of the pieces have changed, thankfully. It wouldn't be an opportunity for Brian to be the lead guitarist if pieces didn't change. But their music is iconic. Their sound is unique to them. And they're continuing to put out new music, which is really cool to see. So, Brian, I ask every guest on my show the same question because it's a broad question, but it gives insight into where your brain is at this moment, so that I understand where I want to take the show and ask certain questions based on things that you say.
Sure.
Who I think Brian Quinn is through our relationship or looking you up online or Wikipedia may be completely different, and probably is, than who Brian Quinn thinks Brian Quinn is.
Right.
And so I'm going to ask you the question that I ask everybody else: who is Brian Quinn?
All right. So I'm a guy from Northeast Pennsylvania. I grew up in Wyoming Valley. You know, I knew that I loved music at a real young age. I was always an active guy. I was involved in sports one way or another, martial arts, and I just always had my hands in something. Yeah, I don't know, man. I tend to think of myself as a hard worker. I was instilled with a great work ethic, and from my parents and my grandparents on both sides. And I'm a regular person that got an extraordinary opportunity, and I'm a person that also has a job. My favorite part about having the job that I have is that I make people happy. It's one of the few things in the world few professions in the world where people go as an escape, and that they could something that makes them happy and feel something different rather than whatever they're going through in their lives. But yeah, as far as it goes for me, man, that's who I think I am. I know what I just knew at a young age, knew what I was born to be and what I wanted to be. Whether or not it turned into rock stardom or not was inconsequential to me. I just knew that I loved music and wanted to be in it and make people happy.
I think that's a great point that you made about the making people happy and how music is literally the great uniter.
Yeah,
It's
sure.
the thing that you can put people on opposite sides of any debate, political, racial, ethnic, whatever, and you put them together and just play music. It is literally the thing that soothes all ills.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
And
Yep.
there's guys like me. When I remember when we were going to the Gulf War, and I tie this in because of who the drummer of your band is, but our anthem song when we were in the Gulf was "Alive" by Pearl Jam.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
And obviously the drummer from that album, the 10 album, is now the drummer of Candlebox, Dave
Yeah.
Crutzen. So it's a nice little symmetry there. But that song was like my anthem, and whenever I hear that song, it takes me back to those feelings and those emotions that I had during that period of time when we were deployed. And I think everybody that's breathing has a song or multiple songs that take them back to a moment in time that brings them either sadness or joy or um, excitement or whatever that is. And I think that's why music is such a valuable component to our world. And not to mention the frequency component, how certain songs are played at certain frequencies and what certain vibrations do to
Oh,
the
yeah.
brain and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
we can have that conversation too. I've been deep diving into that kind of stuff
Yeah.
too. So.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a conversation I've actually had with Skunk Baxter before, because he's all interested in that. We've talked about that. It's a really interesting end of music, going in down that rabbit hole. But also too, it's like something I talk about with people. It's like talking about time travel, and I always make the argument that it absolutely does exist because of what you just talked about taking you back in time. I was like, time travel does exist, and it's through music, because it'll take you back to a point that you remember. Oh, this, I went through a breakup with a girl, or I got together with my wife, or partying with my buddies, or you being in the Gulf War and being a veteran, and that type. Music is powerful, man. It really is, in that sense.
So you're a rock guy. You've been in strictly the bands that I'm aware of, from more harder edge stuff to more the grunge stuff and everything in between.
Yeah.
You've been your first band wasn't it a little bit more edgier. The first one that you sort of became known for up in.
Oh yeah, Burial Ground. That was
Yeah.
I was still a teenager when that all happened. We had gotten off of the record deal. I was only like 16 years old with that. But that was very heavy. That was like in between hardcore and death metal, and we would
Right.
play like all the hardcore circuit places like Lemore's in Brooklyn and the Unisound in Reading, and then just every church basement and fire hall that we can get into from wherever. That band actually kind of led me to Philadelphia, just being so in love with music, and I wanted to be a music major. And I just always, where I grew up, I was 90 minutes from Manhattan and 90 minutes from Philadelphia. But there was just always something with Philadelphia that, I always seemed like a magical place to me as a kid. And then some of the bands like Cinderella and Brittany Fox and Hall & Oates, and the Hooters, all those outstanding like rock type bands coming out of here. It just always seemed that place. So I decided to move to Philadelphia, and I moved here in '94 and never left.
So what is if you had to say your musical inspirations, whether it's bands or individual artists that help to create, because you have a unique Brian Quinn sound when you play. Like you have some I think we talked about this, the beginning of Gasoline when you were in the band Octane. That opening acoustic riff you had there. I said that sounds a lot like something like from Tesla, and it's that sort of like a country rock, like anthematic. You've got the ability to just crank out an anthematic solo. Like I just see that passion in you that just comes out through your hands. And is there an influence that created the Brian Quinn sound that you could attribute to?
Well, obviously Tesla's a big one for me. I love that band. I thought they were great. But I have a pretty broad stroke in as far as what influenced me as a kid. Like I love everything from classical music to death metal, you know what I mean? And everything in between. For me, if it was good and it sounded good and made me feel something, then I didn't care what genre it was from. Obviously just growing up in a house, I have two older brothers, and they were both rock guys. So that was kind of the majority of what I was exposed to. So AC/DC and Queen, Def Leppard, Kiss, Black Sabbath, Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, all that type stuff. My favorite band, what influenced me is I don't necessarily write like this, what probably my favorite band ever is Black Sabbath. I'm with Ozzy, and I'm just a big Ozzy guy because he always had the greatest guitar players, and I just had some that was been my dream as a little kid. What kind of got me into it was like I want to play guitar for Ozzy one day. Yeah. So but that was a big one. But yeah, I just had a big influence, a pretty broad influence. I'm a huge fan of the band, any of the 60s classic rock, the band, Bob Dylan, Creedence Clearwater was one of the earliest bands I heard. So, and they all had that country-ish vibe to them, but still some driving rock songs. So yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that, man, because I've been writing a lot since the pandemic started. I've probably written close to 80 song ideas that I haven't fleshed them all out yet. And the problem is I have to stop myself from writing almost because I need to go back and start going through this stuff. I have albums and albums worth of material if I needed to work it out. But I do have to stop myself and be like, okay, you have this many ideas, go back and start them. And when I went back and started listening to some of them, it does cross a pretty broad spectrum where I was like, I'm just going to write. I don't care if it comes out sounding country or metal or this or that. I'm going to write, and whatever comes out because, I'm not supposed to be a filter. I'm just supposed to be a channel. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a great segue because, I sent you 2 songs. I'm now, and for those of you that don't know, Brian and I know each other. We've been friends for going on 10 years now, maybe a little longer.
Yeah.
His wife was my company's publicist. So we have interconnectivity out the yin yang, and he's somebody I trust with just about anything. And I recently started writing songs, but lyrics, not musical. I don't have to do any of that crap, but like writing lyrics for songs, and I send them to him and a couple other guys just to get their input on what they think. And I understand why I write a song lyric, because all I'm doing is writing a poem and then envisioning how it would sound lyrically if I was hearing somebody play music behind it that I don't yet know what it sounds like. That's how I write a song. How do you write music and a song? What's your process like? And is it abstract? Is it all of a sudden shit just pops into your head and you're like, fuck, I got to get this down? Or is it I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write and just sort of dick around with some keys and some chords and see what comes out?
Yeah, it's most of the time it's just something will pop in my head. I'll hear either vocal melody or a beat or a guitar riff or something. I would say 85 to 90% of the time I just think of a drum beat. Like I'll have I'm more rhythmically based when I start writing, and then kind of everything just falls into place from that. If I get woken up out of a sleep, it's normally for a lyric or like a melody, like a sound melody that I hear. But yeah, I feel if I sit down, I'm like, today and I pick up my guitar, I'm like, today I'm going to write a song. That's when nothing ever happens. You know what I mean? Just kind of got to let it happen, I guess. Organically is the best way I could put it without sounding cliche. It just happens. Something will pop in my head and I start with that and then build a song out from it. That's why I was alluding to earlier is the ideas, everything I have, the voice memos on my phone, I'll sing like a vocal idea that I hear in my head, or just hum some kind of melody line, or even just kind of almost beatbox a beat that I'm hearing just to get the initial idea down. But that's where I'll get a flood of ideas, certain times of the year. And then I just have to go back and flesh them out and work on them and make them into songs. I think I should really start just doing that as they come. You know what I mean? Because then they just pile up and get backed up. And then I have pieces of a lot of things rather than just doing it that day, being like, all right, I'm writing a song today. I got an idea in my head.
Yeah, it's like getting in the weeds, and you,
yeah, really.
You kind of can't see the forest through the trees. So I can totally, in a non-musical way, I can see how in my world I have so many moving parts in my life with my entrepreneurial stuff and podcasting and everything that sometimes I can't get focused on any one of them.
Yeah, right.
Accomplish the thing that I'm trying to accomplish. So I can totally get that. When do you find that the quiet? So for me, when I'm quiet, when there isn't chaos around me is when I'm the least productive. Like I need to have multiple layers of shit flying at me in order for me to actually get moving.
Yeah.
And do you find yourself, because you've been in a music industry as well as small businesses, really took a hit,
Mhm.
the giggers and bars and the guys that are playing in stadiums, everybody took a hit
Yeah.
musically with 2020 and COVID. Did
Mhm.
you find that that was a chance? Were you productive? And typically, were you always productive in the periods of downtime, or do you typically thrive when you're exposed constantly to the stimulus of being on the road and traveling and playing that usually spurns your musical ideas?
I would say more than likely the downtime is when it really happens, when it's a little bit quieter and there's yeah, I'm not getting pulled in 1,000 different directions and my mind isn't being pulled in 1,000 different directions, where it's more of a calm. I have more of a calm, and then like the ideas will start popping in. At least that's how it happened over the pandemic for me. And then obviously lyrically, just with everything that's happened in the last year with the pandemic and social justice and the elections and everything else, there's no shortage of things to write about for sure. Which when I get to the lyric part, which is usually the last thing I do when I make records, not going to have any shortage of subject matter. I'll tell you that.
I mean, that's no shit right there. This was definitely the year of content. Like
Yeah.
there is 500 different ways every topic can be twisted and turned
Mm.
and debated. And so this was just one of those, and I try to look at everything from a positive spin. I don't like to be negative about things because I try to envision a world in which I'm in some level of control of outcomes. Like
Right. Yeah.
I don't like to believe that I'm simply just here waiting for the next thing to happen to me.
Right. Yeah.
So I look at 2020 as a blessing,
Yeah. Yep.
um, for many reasons, whether it's a chance for people to truly appreciate what's actually important, whether it's
Yeah.
um, identifying the value of that interpersonal connectivity between another human being face to face. Whatever
Yeah.
the thing that was removed or taken or um, mandated not to be allowed, those things that became missing became the things that you then appreciate. So I look at it as 2020 was the year that the world saw how the world got.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Exactly. Well, a lot of people, everybody keeps talking about the Great Reset and this and that, and I did, I guess, see it that way, but for me, it was more of a great equalizer. Exactly what you're saying, where we kind of got a mirror put on us, and a lot of people didn't like what they saw, and some of the people that they're like, they chose not to see it or pay attention to it. So that's lyric content, like I was saying, for me right there. But yeah, I'm in agreement with you, man. Having this last year, just to settle down and really take stock of what's important, and I really did see it as a blessing. And I didn't at first. I was really kind of bugged out because I was losing my living, what was keeping food on the table. And but after it happened and I kind of settled into being home, and I'm like, all right, well, this is going to be reality for a while. um I love being home because I needed the break. I didn't realize I needed a physical and mental break, but I did. I needed it, and I was happy to have it.
And I think the cool thing about having a separation from the thing that you love, which is being on stage and playing music for people
Mm.
that love it, is that when you come back, that I think between you and your bandmates, your your appreciation for the gift of
Mhm.
music and being able to perform it in a way that inspires others or makes them feel a certain way in a good way will make your performances have more meaning. And then for the people that are listening
Mhm.
that have been yearning for that ability to get out in a collective, a concert's
Yeah.
not nearly as enjoyable by yourself as it is with 20,000 people. Like
Yeah.
like that ability to be out in that collective and go, I'm sharing this moment with all these people who I may not know and never meet. But I know that, like, I'll give you an example. I was at Monsters of Rock, Munich, 1991.
Mm.
And I can remember every song that was played by each band and what happened in each song and what I was doing during each song.
Nice. Yeah, right.
And, I remember when Motley Crue came out with a Harley, when Tommy Lee came out sitting on a Harley with microphones in the baffles, revving that engine and blew
Yeah.
all the sensors in the speakers. And it was
All
an
right.
hour and a half delay to replace all the fuses in the speakers before they could start playing again.
Yeah,
And
right.
I'm just like, that was just badass. Like, if you're gonna shut down a concert for a little while, do it in the beginning of a song, like that, and like
Yeah.
kickstart your heart. And I went to the Tesla Scorpions concert when Tesla was in Munich, 5-man acoustical jam concert, the
Oh, right on.
Scorpions Wind of Change. And I just remember everything about that concert. Like, those are moments that we miss now, that
Yeah.
have been removed, not because we want them, but because the world said so.
Yeah.
And once that's allowed to happen again, once the world reopens and the fear subsides and collectiveness is allowed to be celebrated again, I think that feeling of joy and memory making is the thing that's going to be the most appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And I wasn't I didn't need a break from playing music or performing or being with the guys, being able to play concerts, like performing and actually doing music. I didn't need the break from that. It was just a grind of to travel and being out on the road for that many years in a row. I mean, we'd have breaks here and there. It wasn't it wasn't 300 days a year and then only like a little break. I mean, we were grinding for a while when it was going just year to year to year. It's like, man, I could really use a longer break than a couple weeks. So it was just a grind of all of it, that's what I wanted to break from. But yeah, I am, like, now I'm getting pretty itchy to be able to perform again. I'd like to get back out, play concerts, see things where it gets back to normal. It's going to be nice when it gets back to normal. And I think everyone's going to appreciate it, not just the musicians and whoever, everybody else that are working in the venues and whatnot. I think it's going to be a collective thing, a human experience when we get to go back, that everybody's going to be appreciative that the world's a little more normal.
Yeah, I agree. And one thing I love about you is that, I saw you. So when I owned Max out, my gym that I owned, Brian and his buddy Danny were clients, and they were getting swollen, huge and strong. And Brian, Brian loved to have his either wearing a wife beater or cut off shirt. And
Oh yeah.
But when you see Brian, when you transform yourself, and that's the best. Like, you see Brian now, he looks all like hip and cool, and he on stage. There are times when you're scary as fuck looking. Like, it's just like back in your foster child Octane days.
Uh-huh.
Way more intense looking, like with the straggly hair straight down, just looking like you're about ready to, after you're done, there's a pretty good chance the liquor store's getting robbed afterwards, like that.
Yeah. Well, getting a little bit older, a little bit wiser, but start slowing down a little bit. Need some of the, put my body through a bunch of punishment. I do miss doing that Max Out thing was fantastic, man. And that kept me in great shape for everything that I had done after that, is for going out on the road. And a lot of what I learned there, I carried over into other workouts when I was still really into the fitness thing at the point in my life. So yeah, that was fantastic. We settled down a little bit, man. But the stage is just, I don't know. I go white, man. It just, I hit out there and whatever happens. I don't think I'm actively thinking of anything other than just getting through, just going through the muscle memory and whatever is putting on a show, whatever. But usually, like, when I was talking about work ethic earlier, I have a whole pre-show routine that, at least 90 minutes, maybe 2 hours before we go on, I go on to into the back of the tour bus or wherever my practice setup is, and we get the set list usually mid-afternoons from Kevin during the day, or we sit and help him put together the show for that particular night. Then I go a couple hours before the show, I play the entire show. Just back there playing through it, doing, you know, solos, every song, back to front to back through for the entire show. And we usually do a 90-minute concert or longer. So when I hit a stage, I've already played the entire show. And generally when I finish the practice backstage, I have about 15 minutes before my tech comes and gets me, and then we walk to stage. So I just got done playing our entire concert, and now I got to do is stand up and play it, you know?
And I don't think people recognize that. Like I would have never known that it's almost like an athlete, like the preparation when you're a professional, when you're not just some guy who likes to sing and play guitar. You're a professional. This is your profession. You are a paid employee of Candlebox, and your responsibility is to slay it every single night. And there's a performance requirement.
Yeah.
And I think that level of commitment to your craft, when people look at certain people that are, you know, phenomenal at their job in music, musician wise or whatever, you kind of just think it's a God-given thing that they just get up and fucking do it, and that's just what it is. But there's a lot of preparation involved.
A lot. Yeah. I mean, really, you're only seeing the end result of the years and thousands and thousands of hours of practice, and, you know, the years and years upon years of playing show after show and figuring out what not to do, you know, so that people see the end result. The concert is always just an end result of an enormous amount of work, not just on the musicians, but even, you know, the 3-hour sound checks that our crew is dialing in the sound to make it great for that night. And, you know, the other guy setting up, you know, the light show to make the light show fantastic. There's a lot that goes into putting on a rock concert, just one, you know, that particular night. And people, we do that day after day after day after day. So, you know, it is a lot of preparation. So it's the funny thing that I do talk to people about that quite a bit, that you're seeing the end result of a lot of hours of work. But, you know, also too, like for me personally, that's what it takes. Like, you know, you show up on early, not even on time. You show up early, you show up sober, and you show up over prepared. And if you do those three things, I think in anything, but especially with what I do, I know that I'll have other employment opportunities, you know, when the guys in Candlebox decide to hang up the cleats, because they do have, you know, quite a few years on me. I'm a bit younger than those guys. Not breaking balls, but I think it is what it is. It's back. Yeah. So they're probably going to be retiring quite a bit before I will. So, you know, just having the work ethic that I have and going through my routine that I do, that's, you know, hopefully that's going to pay off down the line if, you know, another employment opportunity comes about, you know.
Well, let's talk about the bands you've been in and how the differences between the two, not good or bad, just what you know, when you got into Octane, right? Octane, I remember, for those of you in the Philadelphia area, they were the MMR house band. I guess that's the right term, right?
What is it?
MMR, you were there, like their band, right? For WMMR.
Well, yeah, actually, we had started out with WYSP. Spike Eskin, a dear friend of mine, he was kind of the guy that he saw us one night at the old Harbor Lights in Northeast Philly, which is where the band started out at. And it was actually the only club in the entire tri-state area that would book us, that gave us a place to play, because at the time it was all the cover bands were top 40 and very poppy. And Octane, when I had started that with Brian Bortnick, the lead singer, and, you know, I brought him the idea and I said, listen, I want to start, I want to do something heavy, man. Like, no one's doing heavy music. There's all these people, all these metalheads are sitting home on weekends because they don't want to go out and hear top 40 music that they personally consider garbage. You know, like I said, I find value in everything, but there was a market that was untapped, that there's a lot of people that listen to that type of music. So, you know, I said, let's put it together and do a band, and we'll write, but I also want to write. So, and at the time, Octane was the type of band that we were writing, what we wrote was in the vein of the music we were covering. So, you know, Godsmack was getting big then, Disturbed was getting big then, Korn was already big. So we were kind of like that, I guess, but a little more rock, like not as metal. You know, Slipknot was getting big. Creed was still a massive band. So we were like, well, let's, you know, start a band and do all that stuff and pepper our music in and see how it goes. And it worked. You know,
So the cool thing about Brian's voice, Bortnick, is he has a little bit of the Disturbed sound to him. He's
oh
got
yeah,
a little bit of that really anthemic,
yeah,
almost operatic type ability to his, especially
yeah,
when he's got into the baritone level of his voice.
yeah, yeah. Some Jeff Tate from
Yep.
Queensryche in there. He had Brian's a very versatile singer. He had a lot of things going on. And the other thing that was always blew me away was how effective he was as a frontman, as a stage presence guy. Like he just he had his own thing. I don't think, you know, he wasn't copying any other frontman. He just had a thing that people wanted to watch. And you know, he's a super talented writer and singer. I mean, the guy that his voice is a gift. And I loved that it wasn't, he wasn't like a super high screamer or whatever. You know, he could get up there. He has a big range, but he was more of a baritone voice, you know, where I think then when Foster Child started, I was looking for that more high end tenor rock voice, and that's, you know, and got it out of Danny. I was very blessed with the lead singers that I've been with, all the musicians I've gotten to play with over the years. I've been spoiled to death with drummers, and I've been spoiled to death with frontmen.
Well, do you have a guitar near you, an acoustic?
I have one on the wall. Yeah, what's
Did
up?
you do the beginning to Gasoline? That opening up?
Yeah, I can play B. I don't know if it's going to translate over Zoom.
It will.
Yeah, so when I wrote this beginning part, like this was very much something that was, I was listening to a lot of Tesla at the time and a lot of the Jar of Flies EP from Alice in Chains. So that was kind of an amalgam of those two. So yeah, and then that one. Yeah, and I was.
That's literally, and I'm not man loving on you, but that's one of the coolest beginnings to a song. Cause I love any song that starts off with an isolation, whether it's piano isolation or guitar isolation. I just think if you can make that work and sell it, like that's some badass shit. That's when you know you got a fucking great song. I don't care what they say in the song, but that's when you know that happens, and you're like, oh shit, here it comes. Like that's when I hear that, I get amped.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Right.
Like the beginning of Alive. Like that whole opening to a song is so vital.
Oh yeah. And if you like, that's one of those things with, that's one of those things where if you're hooking a crowd in before the vocals even start, you get it right from the top. You're onto something. You're absolutely onto something. Now it's not. I was to sit down and try to purposely write, I'm going to write some, you know, iconic riff. It's not going to happen. That just happened. I was a huge fan of the song "What You Give" by Tesla, and I was like, I want to do something like that. And then, but I kind of am interested to make it. You know, I want it to still be kind of dark, but like more of a country vibe. So like had like the Alice in Chains thing in my head, and then I said, this is what I want it to sound like. And then I just started playing that and then built that riff on top of it. And I was like, well, it'd be kind of cool if I break up those single note parts with the chords in the middle of it. And that's just how it happened.
It's one of my favorite songs from, people like, I'll play it like at a backyard barbecue or something like that. They're like, who the fuck's that? Like, that's Octane. They're like, what's Octane? And I'm like, a band in Philly that this was like, for me, they're iconic. If you weren't going to go big and national, if you were going to go big and national, that was the song that was going to be the one that launched you into stardom.
Yeah,
And
we thought it was going to happen.
you were close though. Like you had
Close,
some.
yeah. Yep. Yeah, we got very close as you can get.
So then you left. Well, the band just broke up. Is that how it ended, or how did it?
Well, yeah, they continued on. I just decided to leave, man. I thought it kind of ran its course, and where I was, well, I didn't think the band ran its course musically. What ended up happening really was we had so much money in the coffers at that point, and we made quite a bit of money from that CD. I mean, we sold tens of thousands of copies of that out of the trunk of our car, and basically on consignment in all the area Tower records. So we had money to buy. We could have afforded, either like a big, beautiful RV that looks like a tour bus. We could, at that point, probably could have bought a tour bus, and hired someone to drive it. That was my vote. That's what I wanted to do, because it was starting to get to the point where we were playing the same 20 clubs every 6 weeks. And the numbers weren't going down, but they were starting to slip a little bit, and I could see it. And I'm like, we should really get out of the area. But the other problem was, we had some guy, and it wasn't a problem. It wasn't a problem for them. It wasn't a problem for me. My problem was not expanding it. But everybody had young ones, just had babies. Cause I was 22 when I started that band. So, and those guys were a few years older than me, but maybe 26, 27. So they had either already started families or were starting families. And it was just tough, man. And that's what you do when you're in your 20s. I just didn't take that path, I guess. But I just wanted to get on the road and go and write music and get a band and get a recording contract and go and tour. It just wasn't in the cards for those guys. So we were just at an impasse, really. I mean, we're all still great friends and everything, but I just, I wanted something more out of it, and they were happy, and we were making a lot of money. I walked away from a lot of money when I left Octane, like so much that people were like, what are you doing? Are you crazy? But I didn't care about the money, really. I just wanted to go out and make music and tour. And so and then I met Kevin Miller, who was the drummer from Fuel, and he and I decided to start Foster Child. And then I brought Danny and my friend Eric in on that. And that band we wrote together for about a year, and we ended up signing our record contract with Warner Brothers right after that. I mean, Kevin in the band was a huge help. Because of his talent, and his marquee at that time was still very hot because Fuel was still pretty big. So that definitely helped, but it did get us the label attention that we needed. And when we signed with Warner Brothers, the night of our label showcase in Manhattan was the night that I met Kevin Martin. So had that not all transpired and went down, like why Octane, why I ended up deciding to leave Octane, starting Foster Child, getting signed with those guys, and then meeting Kevin was what led everything up to me joining Candlebox.
I think that's the lesson here, right? That life isn't about a bunch of singular moments. It's about connectivity of moments and choices and consequences, right? Life is about, you may end up at the same place, but how you got there could be drastically different than what could have been based on choices and consequences. And I think your choice to stick to your instincts, and your instincts were that there was more out there and that you wanted to see something grow and expand. And if it wasn't expanding, then it was time to, it's no different than being an entrepreneur and starting a business. Sometimes they run their course, and it's not personal. It's just at this point in juncture in your career, you were ready for that next step. And if that next step wasn't coming under the umbrella of Octane, then it needed to come under a different umbrella. And you were, you have enough musical chops and entrepreneurial chops to sort of have that guts, that confidence in your ability to start over. And I think that's, and I don't know enough about the grind to going from getting your first gig in a local fair or something to becoming on stage as a signed recording artist. I don't know that journey at all, but if I had to
Mhm.
guess, that entrepreneurial spirit that's required because you have to be willing to take the risks and willing to start over sometimes in order to rebuild and retool and come back better. I think that's kind of what, if I had to put a label on your journey, it's been that ability to do that with confidence. And then
Mhm.
also the understanding that every person that you've come across and acquainted with had a value.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Well, and the other thing too was that I always made, even from when I was young, like young, 7, 8 years old, I always made it a point to surround myself with people that were better than me at what I wanted to do. You know, and I still do it to this day. So being that way and not being like, oh well, no, man, I'm good already. I'm the best at what I can do already. It's you never should never stop learning. And that was a big thing. My grandmother was always moving, like never stagnate, always move, never be in debt to anybody, and don't stagnate, keep moving. So, and if you do that, that was all like my Italian grandmother's work ethic, and she, lived to be 98 years old and very successful. So, yeah, I just I had to keep moving. That was really it for me. Even and then when foster child, when that started to stagnate and I dissolved that, I just was kind of at the end of a rope where I was like, I don't want to start another band. I don't want to. I really didn't at that point. I was like, I need a break from being a band leader and running an entire business again. Um, so I just kind of took a little bit of a breather and a little bit of a break and decided that I was like, you know what, I'm just going into business for myself and by myself as a hired gun, and I'm going to make myself available to any band that needs it. And once I did that, over that was 2010, or yeah, about 2010, that I decided to go out and just be an independent contracted artist. And 2014 is when I joined Candlebox. So I was just, playing on other people's records. I would give, they needed a guitar player, I'd go out and play guitar for them. And I loved doing that. It was great. And it was very liberating to be able to go and do that. Some session work would be coming in where, you send me records and I'd play on their records and send it back to them. If they wanted to say I was on it, great. If they didn't, that was great too, because they paid me for it. So that was, and just going that route. And that's, where I sit today doing that. Thank God that I had started it back then, because once the pandemic hit, that's really what kept my head above water. Doing that, doing the live streams. I kind of, when that all happened, I had never done a live stream in my life. And the week that the pandemic hit, I buried myself in this basement for about 5 days, 10 hours a day, learning everything I could possibly learn about live streaming and broadcasting and what mics I need and what this and what that. So I never lost. I didn't miss one single week of work. I got off tour to find out we weren't going back out on tour. And then all the bars and restaurants closed down. So I knew I wasn't working there. I had to figure it out. But I didn't miss a week of work. And I was like, I do thank my my grandparents for that work ethic, because I had to figure out how to keep money coming in.
I remember we met. I can't remember why we were together, me, you, and Denise, right after you had, I guess, your audition, for lack of a better word, for Kevin
Mhm.
Candlebox. You had to send in. I don't know if it was live or you sent in uh, some music for him to hear you play his stuff. There was something that happened right when you were getting brought in by Candlebox. There was some.
Oh
Um,
yeah. Well, I did a recording session. I went out to Kevin was in town in York, Pennsylvania. Our friends from the band Live,
yep,
uh,
that's what it was. Yep.
band in the 90s. Yeah, they have a beautiful recording complex out in York, Pennsylvania. And Kevin at the time, Candlebox was on kind of a bit of a hiatus. And Kevin and Adam, our Candlebox's bass player, they were doing a side project with the drummer from Seven Dust, Morgan Rose, and another friend of ours, another guitar player friend of ours. So Kevin said, "Hey man, I'm in Pennsylvania. I'm not far from Philly. Do you want to come out and play on a couple songs for me for this project I have?" I was like, "Yeah." And he really didn't tell me much about it. And yeah, I just went out there blind. I hadn't heard the stuff. I went in, I had them run the song down for me a few times. They needed a solo on one song, so I did the solo. And I was packing. I did the solo, got done the session. I was packing up my guitar to leave, and Kevin was like, "Where the fuck you going?" What are you talking about? It was like, "That's session." It's like, "No, like, can't you hang out? Do you want to play on another song?" I was like, "Yeah." So they dialed up another song. I played on that. And I did have to get back to Philly that night. I was doing a charity bartending gig. And then, a couple of, not very long after that, they had offered me the guitar position in the side project. And then, yeah, I mean, it was pretty much right, or like almost at the same time, Kevin was like, "Well, we're going to make personnel changes in Candlebox, and I need a guitar player. Would you be interested?" And I was like, "Yeah." And I did say to him, which was funny, I said, "Well, where do I have to audition?" He was like, "Yeah, no, you already did. It's done deal. Just what day can you start?" So that's how it happened.
That's such a, and it's kind of like coaching. So I tell people all the time in the football coaching world, at least,
Mhm.
there's guys that say Ursinus College. They get their first coaching gig as like the um, linebackers coach for Ursinus College,
Mhm.
and they stay there for a few years. And one of the coaches that was an offense coordinator or quarterbacks coach or defense coordinator becomes a head coach somewhere else, and then they go and pick out their staff, and they're going to go based on people they've worked with and people they know that are team guys that have the same mindset and philosophy, and they'll bring them on. And it's this music seems to be that you have these inner relationships and all these side projects which people probably don't even know exist, like all
Mhm.
these little side projects where there's collaboration from a bunch of different people from great bands getting together doing side projects, or
Mhm.
doing, like, you're sitting in on a song that nobody know that was you playing on or whatever, but you have these relationships, and it's
Mhm.
through those relationships opportunities present themselves.
Mhm.
And I think it's almost like a microcosm for life. Now, mind you, I might be somebody who likes to nuke bridges every once in a while just for fun, but I don't recommend that.
Right. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but I think more often than not, life is about, if you take the time to truly appreciate interactions and people you meet, um, at some point in time, those people come back into your life.
Yeah.
There's
Oh
this
yeah.
there's this cyclical process in life where you see somebody when you're 18, and when you're 36 and you're out to dinner and you see a guy walk in, you're like, "Oh my God, I met him years ago." Go over and introduce, he's doing something. Next thing you know, you work for that guy or whatever. Like,
Yeah.
those things happen all the time. And
Yeah.
I think in your industry, and if there's something you can tell a young artist who's gigging and hoping to get their chance, I think that's probably one of the greatest lessons you can teach them, is every person they come in contact with is potentially someone they're going to collaborate or be employed by.
Oh yeah. Of course. Yeah. You never know who you're talking to. I mean, that's the importance of being respectful and being humble. You know. y- and I've been both my entire life. I was just raised to be that way. And it was. Yeah, I'm in kind of in a boat where you're at, of what you're talking about, because like, unless I feel like I've been really disrespected, I'll say something. I'm not going to necessarily burn the bridge, but I'm going to tell you how I feel, and and be honest. And I always think that being honest in with any situation, whether it's something like that or anyway, if you're honest and your intentions are forthright, I think that's the way to be. Because if you're mad at me for being honest, well then you're mad at me for telling you the truth. And so I don't know. That's kind of always how I've operated. And yeah, being humble, and you just got to watch, like that. That old saying is, watch who you're bad to on the way up, because the same people you're going to see on the way down. And that is one of those things that you don't know who you're going to end up working for, or be around, or do it, be collaborating with, or whatever. I'm happy to do it. That's why I said I always surround myself with people that are far above what I do, and are better at what I do, because that's the only way for me to get better. And even people that haven't been at it that long, you'll learn stuff from them. I just try to have an open mind around everyone. But if someone's doing something I can't do, I want to know how they're doing it, how they got to be where they're at.
Yeah, there's there's nuggets of information that are useful to every single person, regardless. Like I learned stuff from you about music
Mhm.
without knowing that I was at one point in time trying to write a song, right? Like I pay attention to the
Yeah,
things you do and how you are and how you handle your career and the things that you say and do and how you treat people. You know, you're still a local guy, right? You still go hang out at the Red House and it's like this to me, and I'm not blowing smoke up your ass, but that to me is a sign of who you are as a man, is how you act when 20,000 people aren't screaming your fucking name, right?
yeah, right. Yeah, of
And
course. Yeah.
and that's an important quality I think that people need to know is that regardless of your ascension and where your pinnacle reaches, you
Mhm.
still have to be the person that can go to the Rib House and sit down and jam with Paul Hammond and the other guys and just sort of bang out a couple songs and have fun and have a beer. Like there's
Yeah.
and that's in any profession that you're in. Like you got to be able to come back to the place you started and be that guy again. Like
Yeah,
you
and
can't,
that's the reason we started, right? I mean, that's the reason we started doing it because I loved playing guitar and loved jamming with my friends, and that's basically what happened. It just, luckily turned into a profession for me to be able to do it. Obviously, it was a lot of hard work, and I did have kind of a clear path set in my mind of when it would happen and how it would happen. And it never goes that way, but it still happened nonetheless because of the amount of work that you put in. That's, I kind of said it earlier. Any advice that I would give is just be over prepared, be early, and be sober. 'Cause especially in my industry, no one wants to hire somebody all all jacked up on alcohol or drugs. And it's rampant and prevalent in my industry, and it's just nothing that ever interested me. I wanted to play guitar.
right. I remember when you got the job, and shortly thereafter, you got the opportunity to go to Chile and play in Lollapalooza.
Oh, yeah, yep.
And I tried to finagle myself into the security detail of that. It didn't work out, but I remember seeing the video from that, and I don't know how many people were there. I can guess it was a shit ton.
Yeah,
Um, was that the biggest stage you ever played on?
that
Pop
was
the
the
people
biggest
wise.
crowd I've ever played to.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was the
yeah.
biggest crowd to date that I've ever played to. That was a lot of people. That was a sea of humanity. I don't know what they were creeping up on. They had to be creeping up on 200,000. And I mean, at one point, I'm sure when the headliners played, there was more than that. It was probably about 250,000. But yeah, that was a ton of people down there. They have a voracious appetite for rock and roll in South America, and they treat us very well. But yeah, and we also went down there on a shoestring budget. I mean, to get down there was kind of a lot. Just getting there is expensive. That's why the band really hasn't done Europe all that much. It's just this day and age, it's so expensive to travel abroad. We do it as much as we can, but unless there's other factors out there that are helping to sponsor it and get behind it, it's very tough to afford, because especially if you know we do very well in the States, but if your following isn't as big in other countries or parts of the world, you're relying on the ticket sales to carry the tour. And if we got to play smaller venues, we'll sell them out, but we just have to play smaller venues than we're able to play here. But South America is a market that the band just kills in. I don't know, and that's been going on for long before I had joined the band. So we'll go to South America as much as we can, and Chile especially is just a massive market for the band. We did uh, two or three nights in a row at the Teatro down there in Santiago, and we played the one night. We played, I think, for 3.5 hours straight. I mean, it felt like we played every single song off every album because we didn't know when we were gonna, how soon we we're going back there. And that was my first trip there. And then, yeah, the second trip was when we went for Lollapalooza down there, which was killer. That was a great experience.
What's it like? Now I've shared with you my dream is to just once, just I want to do a sing, and I don't even need to sing well. I just need to say I want to sing alive
Yeah.
on the stage and do a crowd surf and then never come back. Just take me all the way back and just drop me off by the beer stand. I'm good, right?
Yeah, you're not even finishing the
Yeah,
song.
I don't give a fuck if I finish. I just want to be up there, start, dive, and then just be carried off.
Yeah.
What's
Yeah.
it like? Like, what's the adrenaline rush like when you play on it? Granted, I think playing in front of, I'm a speaker. I've spoken in front of 10 people and I've spoken in front of 1,000 people.
Yeah.
And you know
Right.
that I get pleasure speaking regardless of the size of the audience.
Mhm.
But it's a two-part question. One, does it matter the size of the audience? And two, what's it like when you know that you are playing in front of 200,000 people? And is it like that? Is it a mad rush or is it a holy fuck, I better not mess up?
Yeah. Well, all right. So part A, no, it doesn't matter the amount of people. I'm a performer. That's what I love doing. You know, I like getting in front of people and entertaining. It really, honestly, the bar gigs and the club gigs to me are harder because you're kind of under even more of a microscope than you are in front of however many tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. So yeah, the smaller gigs I think tend to be the harder ones, especially like the solo acoustic ones, because there's no stacks of Marshall amplifiers and distortion to hide behind. It's wire and wood, and you're by yourself. So that I think is the harder way to go. Yeah, the adrenaline rush. Yeah, when you walk out and see that amount of people, it goes right through you. It takes the breath out of you. It really does. And then when we've been lucky enough there's been a couple festivals with a crazy amount of people. We had a technical issue, or we just weren't on it because we're up and down. You know what I mean? Those festivals, when we play those, is we call them throw and goes, where our tech has to have our stuff set up right behind stage. One band rolls off, we roll on, they throw our stuff down, quick line check, and then we got to go. So it's very fast and very chaotic. But when everything's working and there's no show goblins, screwing up the amps or guitar strings breaking or anything like that, if it's a set that we just go out and kill, which we've been lucky enough to do a lot of them, yeah, that adrenaline rush is crazy. Now the Lollapalooza, the size of that audience, when you finish a song and it's like, a hard stop and it's a big hit that a lot of people recognize and they were singing along to, and it's over and you hear that roar of that crowd, you could feel the wind from their breath like come through the stage. You know what I mean? Like it just goes through you. That's the big rush of that for sure. Yeah,
I know that in that concert itself, there's video from when you played. So you weren't lead at that time, right? You were whatever that's called, the other side of the stage.
Where was it? Which concert was it?
Lollapalooza in 2016.
Oh yeah. So Mike Leslie was still with us. He was playing lead. Yeah, I did some lead work, but not a ton. Yeah, so I was doing a little more. I was more in a rhythm capacity when I had first been hired with the band. Yeah.
But you got to play the beginning to Alive.
Oh yeah.
And that I'm watching your face, like I'm a body language expert. That's my thing. And I'm watching the one video that zoomed in on you, and I could just see the look on your face, like this is fucking happening. Like,
yeah. Well, my immediate thought, because I remember exactly what I was thinking when that happened. You're just, you're looking out at that amount of people, and I'm standing in the middle of South America, 10,000 miles from my house, and I'm just thinking the whole thing. All I could think about was the auditorium stage in my high school, because that was like one of the last times I had played that riff. We had done it for my 12th grade talent show, and I'm on stage in South America in front of a couple 100,000 people with the drummer from Pearl Jam playing. Right. I'm like, what the hell happened? How am I standing here? But yeah, I remember thinking that. I absolutely remember thinking that, like, how am I standing here?
And not this. I mean, I'm not saying that that's literally your body language. I mean, this is what I do for a living. Your body language was fucking A right. Yeah. This is happening. Like the way you were hitting that, and I'm just like, that motherfucker's feeling. He's like, this is actually reality for me.
Yeah. I remember that thought clear as day. That's exactly what I was thinking. I was thinking about my high school talent show, and that the drummer from Pro Jam was behind me, and I was just like, oh my God, how this is crazy. This is crazy that I'm doing this right now.
One of the classiest things I'll say I saw was when Pearl Jam got inducted into the Music Rock and Roll Hall of Fame,
Mhm.
and they brought Dave on to play.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he tried to sneak out, and they brought him back out.
Yeah,
And I
everyone
just
got
think he seems like a real humble guy, real shy guy, not necessarily a guy that wants all the attention. But I just
Yeah.
thought that was really cool for the band to recognize the fact that without that album,
Yeah.
they wouldn't exist.
Yeah, and you know, I love Pearl Jam, and they put out some outstanding music at subsequent to that record, but I just always felt they never sounded the same after Dave was not playing drums with them. They just didn't. The closest they came, I felt, was on the album Yield, when Jack Irons was playing, because Jack's playing and Dave's playing are, I don't even want to say similar, but they're in the same ballpark, I would say.
Same church, different pew.
Yes, yeah, right, exactly. And that was the closest they came to sounding like they did on 10. It was like just a little more raw, a little more driving and straight ahead, like punkier, like. And it's not taking anything away from, you know, Matt or Abraziz or Matt Cameron. Those guys are outstanding drummers, but they're busier drummers. You know what I mean? They're kind of, it's just a little more technical, and not saying that Cruisin' isn't technical, but he's very technical and very outstanding, but it's just different. Like there's like drummers that kind of play like Neil Peart-ish, you know what I mean?
Yep,
And
yep.
Dave is fantastic, has a lot of really cool fills, but it's not that type of playing. Like I always felt that Abraziz and Matt played like that, and I love that playing as well. But it just and then you know, it's also to your introduction to whatever band and whatever the original lineup is of the band. So you're used to it being that way. My opinion of Guns N' Roses was the same. I don't think that band ever sounded the same after Steven Adler left, because he brought there was just this thing that he had that made that band sound very street and very raw, that when Matt Sorum came in, who's an outstanding drummer, one of my favorite drummers in the world, but it was just different. It was almost like he was too good. You know what I mean? Like too like snappy and too technical for what he did for Guns N' Roses. But yeah, Cruisin', I can't say enough about that guy. Just what an outstanding drummer, but pure joy to get to jam with him and make music with him, and then when we get to perform, it's like it's fantastic. I love it.
It seems and I met Kevin once, and it seems like he is as passionate about his craft as you are about yours. And that he seems like a CEO of the company, right? So he is Candlebox. That his expectation for those that are in his company is high, and I appreciate that as a business owner and as a leader. I appreciate when someone has a bar set and doesn't come down from that bar, and just continually fills the room with people that are achieving that bar.
Yeah. And he's absolutely that way. He's a go-getter, and he does expect, you know, he expects the best out of you, you know, and he'll call you out if he feels that anything's slacking, or, you know, you're not pulling your weight. He'll absolutely call you out. And it is inspiring, because I'm in business for myself, technically, being, you know, owning my own brand and my own, I am my own brand, you know, in that sense. But, you know, I want to do a good job for him. I want him to be happy. I want him to know that he's getting the value out of the money he's paying me. And that I'm not just, all right, well, I'm in the band, I could just kind of sit back and just pay me my money, which I'm not like that. I want him to be as proud of my work as I am of it.
And I think there's something to be said for that, because, you know, I'm not a follower by nature. I certainly don't like to be part of groups. I'm not a joiner. But if I do, in the, the times that I have joined, it's because I trust and respect the person that is leading.
Yes.
And I trust their, not just their ability to do whatever it is the group is designed to accomplish, but also I respect the way they lead and the way that they communicate and the way that they are accountable themselves and then hold other people accountable. So it sounds like Kevin's that kind of guy.
Yeah. Yeah, he absolutely is. And, all, I guess kind of all of us are in a sense that way, because that was the one biggest thing, one of the big things for me when I did dissolve foster child and decided to go out on my own, where I knew I would purposely be joining other situations where it wasn't my, I was landing, if I landed the gig, I landed the gig, but it wasn't my corporation. It wasn't my business, and biting my tongue on a lot of the situations that I was in, that was tough. I found that they were, some of them were asking me for advice. I'm like, I don't know, I can't tell you how to run the business. Like, I'm here for this job and this is what I'm going to do. Like, I can't, like, that's on you.
Right.
So that was the hardest thing, was to give the reins. And, I'd be more than happy to give some advice, but then if that advice goes sideways somehow for that particular person, it's, I don't want it coming back on me. Well, you're paying me to do a job. I'm here to do that job. And that's how it went. But with Kevin and Candlebox, he's a good leader, and he makes solid decisions for the band and what he feels is the best for the band. And, we've got to go along with it and it's worked out. And I'm very happy there. So there's been situations where I filled in and I'm like, man, I couldn't wait for it to be done. And when I got with Candlebox, we all love each other. We spent so much time together and enjoy each other's company as friends. And then it's basically the bonus that we get to play music and play concerts together.
I think a good way to sort of close out the show a little bit is to talk about your friendship with Danny and
Mhm.
how he's somebody that I care about as much as I care about you. And I love the fact that your journeys are independent, but collectively together on times, and that you can pick up a guitar together and mics and just sort of jam out and sound as if you never didn't play together for years. And it's just it's a pretty cool relationship that you guys have. And, he's one of those guys, we talked about Brian Bortnick's operatic kind of voice and how he has that great baritone.
Mhm.
I think what people may not know about Danny is that, he's got the Elvis ability. Like, he can sing Elvis like there's no tomorrow,
Yeah.
which isn't
yeah.
easy. But then
Yeah.
go screaming at, like, holy shit octaves
Yeah. Right.
in a rock band, and his versatility. And I think we sometimes forget about the fact that just because Axl Rose sang the way he sang in Guns N' Roses doesn't mean that's the only sound that comes out of his mouth, right? That there's
Yeah.
other levels to his range that just was the one that got him paid a lot of money. So
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
we forget that. And I think somebody like Danny is somebody who's found his ability to use his gift in so many different venues and so many different groups.
Oh yeah, yeah, for sure. And each one is different than the next, which is, speaks to his versatility as a singer. And he was always very, very conscious of taking care of his voice, warm-ups and cool downs and all that of the like. The bands, especially with like Foster Child, was crazy. Because we were talking not long ago, and he was like, man, I don't even know if I could sing like that again. I was like, you could. It's like, you probably don't want to, but I know you could. But yeah, he just another amazing talent. Like the stuff he did, that Featherborn record, I think is fantastic. And it's very like more of a chill keel for where his vocal range is at that point. And I was talking to him about it, and even maybe like the first time I had heard Patience by Guns N' Roses, I didn't think that was
Exactly.
Axl. Like, I didn't think that was him singing. I'm like, who's singing this song? Because up until that point, all you heard was Appetite, and him just ripping your head off from cover to cover. And then when Danny did Foster Child and then with Featherborn, it is night and day. And actually with Brian Bortnick, oddly enough, Brian Bortnick was the one that told me about Danny. He was like, you got to go down South Street and see this guy sing Elvis. And that was my introduction, Danny. When I went down and saw him sing the Elvis stuff, and yeah, man, he sure shit. He killed it. He just did a great job with it. But I heard something in his voice that I was like, think this dude, because when he was getting up to the higher stuff, I was like, think this guy could really work in a heavier rock band. And then with Foster Child, I was like, let's give him a shot and see what happens. And it worked out. And I'm glad it worked out, because Danny never sang like that before or since. So it's kind of a cool Polaroid. That album's a cool, or those two records is like a cool Polaroid of Danny in that realm and how effective he was at that. And then even the other stuff that he did.
All right, I'm going to ask one more time. Could you play the beginning to Far Behind on the acoustic? Just the beginning opening riff. Sure.
Yeah. I didn't write this one. I wish I did. But yeah, True Way starts up here. This is, that's it.
That's just like that, just like in Gasoline. It's that it catches you, like it grips you. You're like, oh, I gotta hear the rest of this.
For a second. Yep, right out the gate, you're hooked.
And the song itself is a brilliant song. I mean,
yeah.
Meaning, its storyline, what it was about, why it was written,
Yeah.
adds extra special meaning to it. But just the way it starts off in a very softer, more melancholy kind of way, and then builds this anthemic component to it.
Yeah.
Where it's, when you're solo now, but the solo in the main solo in the song.
Yeah.
And, it's just it's a smash you right in the fucking face at that moment.
Yeah. Well, and I know we're talking about Kevin's business acumen and didn't even touch on the fact of how talented of a singer and a writer and an artist that guy is. I mean, he's one of the best, and that the reason that band has gone to the heights that it's gone to is because of that. I mean, that he is an extraordinary talent, to be honest with you. Seeing just how he works, and all the thought, his lyrics are always very thoughtful. The melodies he comes up with, they're unlike any melodies of anyone that I've ever worked with. It's just, he's just coming from and operating from a different plane, it always seems like. And that's, I love writing with him. I was stoked about the Candlebox gig, just going into it, which is almost as like a glorified cover gig, because I didn't think I'd be writing records with him. I thought this, all right, we're going to go out, we're going to play this first record and some songs off the other albums. And we probably could. Kevin probably could do that, but he always is constantly evolving as a writer and an artist. And man, some of the records subsequent to that, to the first album, I think is some of the best stuff he's ever done. And the side, he has the side projects with Gracious Few and Kevin Martin and the High Watts. That record is outstanding. And then the side project we did, I mentioned earlier with Morgan from Seven Dust, is called Le Projet, LEPROJET. And all of our stuff is for free on YouTube, but we never released an album technically. There's an EP out on iTunes that you can find. But yeah, it's just, he's always figuring out ways to reinvent what he's doing. And with the first album I did with them in 2016, Disappearing in Airports, is completely different from this record that's going to be coming out now in September, called Wolves. And we've been getting some really great feedback on the first two singles. And on this record, we had done some co-writes. We had other writers come in and sit with us or send us an idea, and then we just kind of did our thing to it, and did a collaboration that way. And man, I'm thrilled with the results so far. And it takes a lot for any artist to branch out and be like, all right, I'm going to write with some guy that's not in the band. I think that's a real ballsy move. But like I said, Kevin is always changing things up. You know, he doesn't like to stagnate either, and that's the great thing about being around guys that are just that talented and that don't want to stagnate either. I found a really, really good fit.
It seemed real symbiotic. Like there was you're always needing to grow and evolve and reach farther
Mhm.
is, and you would think, and you nailed it on the head that, and I thought when you got the job that you would just be playing all Kevin's songs, like you'd just be the guitarist at the time, playing the songs of Candlebox from, back when they were in their heyday,
Yeah,
in the '90s. And great gig to have, if you can get it. But I certainly wasn't thinking they were coming out with new stuff, and that you would be, on those albums as a contributor and not just some guy that's playing far behind on stage,
yeah.
over and over again. And I
Which
think that, yeah,
I was happy to do that. Like
yeah,
if that was the gig, that was the gig. I was happy to do it and be making music with those guys, or at least performing it one way or the other. Yeah, I mean, getting to make records with them, and I'm on my third now with them. So it's been, I love it. I love making music with them, and it's just we do it very fast. I mean, even both records, both studio albums, Disappearing in Airports, and this new one, which is entitled Wolves. Both albums are done very fast. We wrote like 13 or 14 songs in like 3 days. Like we were just grinding. It was, like 3 12-hour days in a row. And we were just cranking out songs. And I mean, they were coming. It wasn't like, well, a couple of the co-writes that we did came in as like more full ideas, but the rest of it was all iPhone voice memo. Like I got a piece of this, which I think could be something. Let's build around it. And that's how we did it. But we worked very fast, and then we recorded it. Even I think we finished it in 10 days in LA, or 12 days, something like that, to get all the parts recorded. But we wrote that fast and went in and recorded. I had an album done in 2 weeks, which is, kind of going back to what I started with. I need to discipline myself to do that for my own stuff, because I have all these ideas and I don't want to get inundated ideas. I just need to write it, just have it come out in one just fell swoop and be done. All right, this is the record, I'm living with it, and now go make it.
one thing that I'm curious about, because I'm about ready to go down this path with the two songs that I co-wrote in the recording side of it. When you do a recording, when you record a song, is it you're in a booth by yourself playing the music and you're just playing the guitar part, or is it you're all together in a room playing the song? How does that work?
So we prefer, because everybody kind of grew up a little bit more old school, where we all kind of came up recording to tape, where you had to play all together and get the right take. Now, that being said, normally, we're just going for drums. Say, if we're all in the room together recording, you're all playing together so that the drummer has, a live feel vibe, and then we get the drums down so Dave could get, feel comfortable and be in his element. So we do that. Candlebox, we will all be in a room together, and the nice thing is we have these songs so burned in our heads by the point that we get into actually do our final tracking for the album, that a lot of songs we're able to keep drums and bass. And there's been songs on the last two albums that my rhythm guitar sounded so good and felt so good on like whatever pass it was. Like we'll do it like 2 or 3 times. It's been, it's rare that you get a one taker, but that's happened on a few songs as well, where it was the first take that we put down. We would always do like 2 or 3, but we're like, that first take was killer. And I would even keep my rhythm guitar from it. So, but I guess just if it's going the way it would kind of normally go, we're all in the room together to get drums. And like I said, a lot of times we get drums and bass, sometimes some keeper guitars, but we're just there basically to get the drums. And if we get bass, that's a bonus. If we get anything else, that's a bonus. And then Adam goes in, he'll put his bass stuff on, and then we do Island will go, and then I'll go. Although I think, this last record, I did my rhythm guitars. So that's when I'm sitting in a room by myself with the headphones on of what was previously recorded. I play along with it for the rhythms, and if I need to do a left right, I'll do one left right. But having Island there, he had the other side. So I just really had to worry about my rhythm on my side, and then any of my overdubs, because I'll hear different parts that I could put over mine or over Island's, and vice versa. He does the same. And then we set aside an entire day. Each one of us gets a day to do all of the, we decide who's going to solo on what song. And you just kind of know what fits, what song, if a song fits his style a little bit more, a song fits my style a little bit more. It's not really who's the lead guitar player and who's not the lead guitar player. You know what I mean? It's just, we kind of know what's going to fit. Like, oh, this song just completely fits Island's style of playing. So yeah, man, you should probably solo on this one. Or there's other songs where it's like, this could go either way. So I'll take the first solo and you take the outro solo, or vice versa. So that's how we're working. Yeah, and then we just, everything gets put together, and then Kevin's the last to go. He puts he's in the room with us, but he's kind of like scatting vocal around. It's not even words, kind of almost like Yellow Ledbetter. You know, it's just kind of a lot of mumbling, and he'll hit on maybe a phrase or a word that he likes, and then he'll go back and write the lyrics, and then take I don't know how long he's taken to do vocals, because we're never there when he does it. He likes being on his own to do that, and we obviously trust him in the highest way to go in there and do a job. And every time he comes out with something outstanding. It's just,
Yeah, he's got a unique sound. He's got his own sound. There's no one that I've ever heard that sounds like Kevin. He's very distinct. You can pick him out.
oh yeah,
No matter
yeah.
what he's singing, you're going to know it's Kevin Martin. And I think that's unique to a front man, to a lead singer, to be able to have that sound. And
Yeah.
I think that's a special thing that allows you to continue performing for 25 years.
Yeah. And you know, him and Ed are the two, they're the last. They're it, of all how many outstanding musicians and frontmen and lead singers that came out of that Seattle circuit. Him and Ed are, I mean, there's a few other guys that are still around that were lead singers, like Mark Lanigan, but who I love, one of my favorite writers. But they, you know, I mean, as far as commercial success, where a lot of people knew who the bands were, you know, Ed and Kevin are the last couple guys left of those big Seattle bands, and he, you know, they're both still out there making great music. You know, people, you know, I've been reading a thing. I saw a thing on Facebook. It's like, where's Candlebox been? Like, right where you left us.
Right.
Where have you been? You know, Eddie Trunk did a whole thing on it. He said, you know, it was like, it infuriates me when people ask where a band has been. He's like, they've been making music the entire time, and it's more accessible than ever. You don't even have to go to a record store anymore to find it. All you got to do is type it in on a computer and it's right there. But people seem to be further and further removed from it. It's odd. It's the weirdest thing. It's like such a dichotomy where
that's a whole different conversation about laziness and human beings. But
yeah, right.
If it's not in front of their face, if it's not being put on the radio, if it's not literally low hanging fruit, people won't take that second. Literally, all you have to do is go, oh, there's the second piece of fruit. Like, it's not hard. Nobody's taking that next step in a lot of things in life. So
yeah. It's odd, but we're still out there. We're still making music.
Crushing it. Well, brother, I truly do appreciate you. This has been an amazing show. I learned a lot, things I didn't know about your business. I appreciated your business as an enjoyer of music, and you as my friend. But there's some things I learned today, and I think for anybody who is an up and coming artist who is trying to figure out, what does it look like? What's that journey look like? What is the non-traditional route to get to the top, or what you perceive to be the top? And I think you were able to share your journey, and I think it's going to help a lot of people who are maybe feeling down or not rewarded in their current situation, and give them sort of the kick in the ass or the inspiration to maybe have the courage to go out and reach bigger.
Yeah, I mean, there's no book on it, man. There's no set path, and really, you're only going to get out of it what you put into it. So, I mean, that's really at the end of the day what it is.
Brother, hang tight. Don't go anywhere. We'll talk off there. Everyone, thank you for tuning in again to the 2 Dates and a Dash podcast. It's my joy to do these every week. I have a great show coming up After this one, it's going to be Chaz Skelly, who's a current featherweight UFC fighter, friend of mine. Going to talk about his journey in the fight world and how do you get on a UFC contract. And so that's going to be a great episode. But for those of you that listen to this, I hope you hear not only Brian's passion and his commitment to his craft, but also his mind and how brilliant most musicians are, because their brains work almost like a scientist or mathematician. They have to take the abstract and make it real. And I think that's one of the things that I find fantastic about musicians, is that how their brain works and how they can go from abstract to real, because I don't have that in my own brain. So I always look at that with a lot of awe and appreciation. And just wanted to, again, thank everybody for listening. If you want to learn more about me, go to mattcubbler.com, and don't forget to like and subscribe to my YouTube channel, and to anywhere you listen to your podcast. Make sure you click that subscribe and automatic download button. All right, everybody, God bless, take care, and go out and be kind to one another.